Castle last Friday and
Okay.
met up with people I haven't seen Frank in so long. Mark Dismore was there, of course. It's his track. But I don't know if you're probably before your time, but there was a road racer by the name of Jeff Brown, which was a legend in Michigan. He kind of coordinates everything. Dan Lamella was there, which used to make the LMR engine back in the 70s. Hadn't seen him in probably 40 plus years. And the Green brothers were there. Mark and Jeff, not David. He was in Mexico, but Mark and Jeff were there racing. Lake Speed was there with his C Open. Lynn Haddock was there.
Wow.
And just to go through and reminisce with those people, it's invaluable to me. I think because I so much of my life has been in karting, and to talk to those people and you see them and they see you, there's a smile on their face. You think, you know what, things weren't too bad back then. I guess that's some good memories. So it's almost like therapy for me. But I really enjoyed that. So that was my latest. And then with Xander, he came up with this idea, and I was kind of bugging him about, we got to do something about the history of karting because, if you want to understand what you're doing now and where you're headed, you probably should figure out how you got here, right? So,
Yeah.
so he was all about it, and we've been working on this for a while. But I thought of you. I'm gonna, and we got to get. So I know we got to start working through, but I've got to share this Frank Kelleher story that I remember like it was yesterday because it meant a lot to me then, but it means so much more to me now. I was still WK president. Had to be probably 05, 04, where you're still running the Gold Cup. Okay.
Okay.
So when was your last year in the Gold Cup?
Like last official year was 2002.
So you were at Daytona racing.
So I raced Daytona. Man, it was about 13 years ago was the last time that I raced Daytona.
So I'm walking through the pits or something, and you're going to cross the scales, and I saw you. So there's a familiar face. So, hey, Frank, how's it going? Good. So what have you been up to? Well, I don't know, when did you start with the Speedway?
2003.
Okay. So whenever I talked to you, you had just started with the Speedway.
Okay.
And I said, no, that's great, Frank. I'm sure you'll do a good job. I had no idea, Frank, how good of a job you were going to do. You did okay.
Thank you. Yeah, it's hearing Xander kind of share some about his story and sharing, his age and being on the road since 16. It still all feels like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
That it wasn't that long ago when I started, racing karts and started being on my cousin's dirt modified crew. And now fast forward, Chad Knaus was just in the infield here at Daytona across the street with his son Kip, racing a CKNA event. So, karting has been part of my story. It's part of who I am. And I still get as fired up and as passionate about go-kart racing today as I did when I was racing. And now I feel this sense of responsibility and accountability to make sure that I continue to have karting on a healthy trajectory. So I don't take that lightly. And I'm sure we'll kind of get into it a little bit of, the history of WKA at Daytona, introducing USPKS this year, conversations that I'm having with John Doonan, the president of IMSA, and just, where can we take karting here at the World Center of Racing?
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I want to hear about your first karting experience, but I will tell you that from just another quick story, but when we first started having races at Daytona, enduro was really big.
Yeah.
And we raced at Talladega when they had their road course. Our biggest fan was Jim France.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad and Jim, and I got to know Jim pretty well back in the day. I haven't talked to him in a long time, but my dad and Jim were great friends. My dad knew Bill Jr., but the karting friend we had was Jim France. And I don't know if you ever met Donna Frysmith or not, but Donna was kind of like his right-hand person in credentials and registration and so on. Donna and Jim would go to Talladega with us to make sure that event was successful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's it. I look back and I go, how in the world? But I think that's, and now, fast forward, and we've had, I think every president, I did a lot with John Graham, and after John, I'm trying to think.
You had Robin Bragg.
Robin Bragg. Those were the two I dealt with a lot, was John Graham and Robin Bragg, and then I left WKA. But through that all of those, and now we've got Frank Kelleher. I mean, WK couldn't, or not just WK, but karting couldn't have a better friend at the factory, so to speak, than you, Frank. And to me, it's just such a gift to karting to have you there. It really is.
Well, thank you for sharing that. You mentioned in Jim, like, I still kind of, again, talking about Xander, it doesn't feel that long ago, I'm riding shotgun in a dually, leaving Pennsylvania, driving to Michigan or Ohio or wherever we were racing. And, the thought of big stock car racing, IndyCar racing, NASCAR, the France family. I can tell you right now, Jim France is as dialed in and as passionate about karting and amateur racing, 2 wheels, 4 wheels, as he was then, he is today. And the foundation of motorsports, he cares so much about it. And it is amazing to see Ben Kennedy, as he continues to climb the ranks inside of NASCAR. And I would have to assume one day be running the family business. Don't forget, he started out, with USAC and a 0.25 up to winning truck series races at Bristol and winning races at Bowman Gray. So it is in his veins as well, the passion and the care for it. And, Jim, I was texting Jim when, Chad Knaus' son was racing here, and Jim will reach out to me when WKA is in town and ask questions. So
no doubt.
He is very dialed in, and this entire building cares very much about the foundation and the youth of racing.
That's awesome. And please tell Jim I said hello. He's an awesome guy and did so much for our sport. Tell us about your first race, Frank.
Okay, so my very first, I know this is a karting question, but my very first race, I got to start. I was with my uncle Leo Kelleher and my cousin Larry Kelleher on a Saturday night. We went to Makatech Speedway in the Poconos. My uncle Tom Kelleher was racing a dirt modified, and I can tell you still what it smelled like, what it felt like, the cheeseburger and the French fries that I had, going through all the photos, the still photos that were shot, going through, the binders and looking at all of the different cars and who was sponsoring who and the paint outs. And at that time, the fuel that you could run in a modified, I mean, it was some pretty lethal stuff. I just remember my eyes burning and like, why is my stomach sick? Just breathing in all of this fume. So that was my
good times. Good times.
Great times. And the PA announcer was none other than Steve Post, who now works with MRN. So I've known the Postman a long time, but that is my very first race that I was ever at. There's a photo of me that I have laying around here. 1989, 9-year-old me sitting on top of a pickup truck in the infield of Pocono Raceway when NASCAR was in town. Mark Martin was my driver. We couldn't afford tickets in the grandstands, but you could pile as many people you could in a pickup truck and get in the infield and bring a bunch of grills there. And my very first NASCAR race, my cousin Larry Kelleher, who was always, my idol, who I looked up to, his dad, Leo, bought him a go-kart. It was, I believe, a Coyote. And we went to Greene, New York. There was a small oval dirt track in Greene, New York. And it was my Uncle Leo, my Uncle Tom, Larry. We were in an old Suburban, probably right around 89, 90. We drove up to Green, and Larry, I forget who the engine builder was, but he had, Burris dirt tires on it. And I just remember my uncles kind of explaining, hey, here's where we're going to grid, watch the flagger, they're going to pull you out. And he went out and he won. He won his very first debut on a dirt track. And then I was the shadow that he probably never wanted, but I was always there, just on his coattails, wanting to help and wanting to assist. So my job was to make sure that the wheels were on tight, and to check the fuel, and take the oil out of it, and eagerly watch if they were changing gears. And then Larry started racing at Shellhammers and then at Orville Kart Club. So he was doing dirt ovals and then road course racing. And then I think he was about 15. He went to race at Makatech in a Sportsman and a modified, to where then I was, on his crew. Funny story, and I mean this affectionately about my family. It might sound like they weren't concerned about my well-being, but I was too young to get in the pits at Makatech. Like, I think he needed to be 15. Larry's racing at 15. I'm 3 years younger. So they would pull the truck and trailer over before they would drive in, and they would put me in the trailer. And I would hang on to the side of the wall of a radius rod, and they would sneak me in the pits and say, you got to stay near the pits, because there was no other adult to watch me. So my job was to check air pressure and lug nuts and all of that. So kind of fast forward, I'm now making sure people don't sneak in the pits.
Well, but you've got some inside technique on how that's done, so you know where to look, right?
Yeah, right. That's like the best tech guys, right? The former engine, the best engine cheaters around that always got by. That's the ones that you pull into tech room at the end of their careers.
But I mean, it really speaks to, I grew up blue collar, very blue collar, in a family gas station and garage business. My dad and his two uncles to this day run Kelleher Tire on 430 West Market Street, Scranton, PA.
Wow.
Selling tires, plowing snow, wrecker business, rollback business. There's a body shop, or there was, on every corner. And we grew up in a racing community. And there was a lot of pride in going to work after school. I grew up around men, at a young age. I grew up in a very adult world, behind the counter of a retail business, and then out in the back, it's snowing and a car pulls in and you're laying on a wet concrete floor, jacking a car up, putting tires on it, putting studs and snow tires, by hand with the machine. We used to have a retread business, a recap business. Great days in the summer were when you got to deliver tires, because that means you got to ride around in a pickup truck all day and go throughout the Poconos, and you weren't working with your body that much.
Right.
You were figuring out where you were going to stop and get ice cream.
Right.
That was the highlight of those days. So that was kind of my introduction, a little bit of my background to racing. And from the time that my cousin Larry was racing go-karts, I was getting his old WKA magazines, and they were under my bed, and going through, reading about Jody Felice and Chuck Gaffar, and just these people that were just like legends, like they were living this dream that I wanted. I had two older sisters, and my dad couldn't really justify buying me a go-kart or taking me go-kart racing. Again, we were living day to day, week to week, to where, my cousin was, a single child, and my uncle could justify financially spending the money on taking Larry racing. So I never felt slighted. I just, we're a family, and Larry was the one who was going to race, and I was going to be the one to support him. And I did it with pride. It was with great pride. I was there for him. And it was 1995. Hamlin Speedway opened. Larry was full on into racing a modified at Penn Can, 5 Mile, Makatech, and he had a straight rail Coyote that he didn't sell. And he told me about this guy in the Poconos in Kunkletown named Barry Greenswig.
Yeah.
And it depends what part of Pennsylvania, how you say Barry's last name. There's Greenswig, there's Greenschwag, the nickname of just the Schwag. But there was Barry. And Larry and I hopped in his pickup truck one day, and we drove deep into the Poconos into Kunkletown. And man, it's just a 2-lane road in the country. And there's this house that sits next to the river, and way in the back was a service garage. But in the basement of the house was this engine shop. And it's Barry Greenswig and Kevin Boyko. And there they are, the horizontal shaft, 5 horsepower Briggs engines. And we go to meet Barry, and we're like, hey, Hamlin's opening up. Don't know anything about it, but we need tires and wheels. And Barry sold us Burris K21s on, a two-piece wheel. And we bought them, went back to Scranton. Larry and I, we offset the seat as much as we could. Larry had 2 stout engines from Smitty Power engine, with the straight pipe on it. Mm-hmm. And we went racing. And so I borrowed a helmet from Larry, a jacket, gloves. I wore jeans that I wore in the garage that day, boots. And I went out in my first heat race, and I never saw the flagger. Like there was just so much going on. It was just so busy, so intense. And I'm just trying to follow the cart in front of me. So qualify, heat, feature. I finished second from last, and then went out the next week and I won.
Wow.
And I had the bug, and I was 15 years old, and I just knew, like, means to an end, this is all that I want to do. Like, I just want to go kart racing. And whatever I need to do, I'm going to figure it out. So that was my very first race.
Yeah.
Hamlin opened up. It wasn't even a full season. And then in 96 was their first full season. So I ran stock light, stock medium, and I won the points championship, I believe, in light. I got second in medium. And through that, I found myself now at 16 driving to Kunkletown multiple times a week. And, we could get into it. I mean, Barry really is a father figure to me, and, became that coach, that mentor, that tough love guy. He never sugarcoated anything. He called me out in life and in racing and held me accountable, and played such a massive role in the man that I am today, and the national champion that I became. And, through Barry, I met Tony Sabia and racing at Orville, and it was Tony and his wife and his son and daughter. His son, Anthony, was racing nationals. But my family never saw me run a national, and that is just a product of, they had a small business to run, and they needed to be there working, to where, I joke, I hitchhiked to all of those national and divisional events. But that taught me how to talk, and how to introduce myself, and how to figure out financially how to get where I needed to be, and put money in this pocket. Okay, I need this to eat, and I need this money over here to pay for fuel, or to pay for oil, and I need to share a hotel room. So it really was a very blue collar way into it. And through that, I met Eric Garland. And that's a whole other story of racing for Barry, but running Eric's engines at nationals. That was drama. But we figured it out, and that led to some national championships. So,
I had, and I'll call it a pleasure. It was fun, and he's a character. But I raced with Barry back in the '70s. We ran 125 heavy with a 101, and he and I raced a lot. Got to know each other, and occasionally we'll talk on Facebook or whatever. But I'm not at all surprised on your story about Barry, because that's the kind of person he was. When you meet him, very transparent. He's going to tell you how it is, but he's got a big heart, and if you treat him right, I'm sure as you did, he probably responded tenfold over what you needed, and that's Barry Greenswig. And you mentioned Eric Garland, and what an untimely passing for Eric, but boy, what a great Gold Cup racer he was.
Yeah. What a time when
I say that. I believe I know Jason Eric passed too, then
Rat Power.
Yeah. And did Eric pass as well?
Eric passed away.
Yeah. And Jace did as well.
Jace has passed away. Yeah. When I think back to, my teenage years and starting out going through the WKA magazine and then racing go-karts, and I will never forget being at Orville Kart Club, just racing a club race, road course racing. And I think a divisional rained out somewhere, and in rolls Rat Power, the Rat Pack, Jace Reynolds, Jace Reynolds, Justin Gumley. I mean, their carts were just murdered out black. Like, they looked like a motorcycle club. They were just like the OG bad boys.
Exactly. And they were.
They were. Right? I mean, no eye contact, tough guys. And they got out on the track, and they all just pushed each other, and they would go through the right-hander, and they would strategically bicycle the go-kart over the curb and lay it down. And then rolls in Eric Garland and his crew. They were kind of like punk rock. They were just, hats on sideways and cigarettes in their mouth. And they were just coming out with one mission. They were there to kick Jace Reynolds' ass. I mean, they were there to make sure that Rat Power did not win. And I mean, the gloves would get dropped and they would go at it. And it was inevitable. Guys are in the fence. Guys are on their head in the hay bale. And, then, they're going to want to throw hands after the race. I mean, it was just like,
I know,
like a rock and roll concert. I mean, it was just everything that I just wanted to be a part of. And now here I was just club racing, trying to show my skill though, and compete with these guys. So yeah, it was, you elevate that. Then when you find yourself at a national event and introduce Kevin Colburn, he was super tech doing his own deal after the Robinson era. And, Chip Disharoon, there was just so many names and so many great people that they bled karting, and it was all about finding that 10th of a second on a stopwatch. And as much as we wanted to beat each other, to this day there's still a brotherhood, and there still is this unspoken respect for each other, looking out for each other. And Randy, kind of as you talked about, showing up and talking to people on Facebook, Paul Rice was just here, with MGM.
Yeah.
And
he's doing really well.
And what Zach Linsell are doing, they all look back to those days as you didn't know it when it was going on, but these were going to be the greatest summers of your life. Figuring out life, figuring out competition, and just, I mean, we all thought this was life. We were, I don't say ready to die for it, but I mean, this was Daytona 500 in our mind.
Absolutely.
Winning these races.
And Xander, let me interrupt for 1 second. This is why we're doing this podcast.
Yeah.
This
100%.
is I cannot give you a better example than what the stories Frank just told. This is why we're doing this, because there's so many stories like this that people need to hear about. I mean, they were racing personalities back then, Frank, with no social media.
No.
Right? And that's a shame, because if anything, we need to give, sadly, like with Jace and Eric, they're gone, but we need to give that gratification back to their legacy, because they deserve it, because they helped mold this sport. Did you ever race with Travis Firing?
Oh, I did. So Travis is a few years younger than me.
Okay.
My very first national event was 1999 Charlotte Motor Speedway Grand National races. And up until that point, I had only heard about Travis Firing. And again, it was coming from Anthony Sabia, who was, on Coyote product, racing locally and dabbling in the nationals. And Travis was the it driver in juniors.
Yeah.
And Chris Carroll was the it driver in seniors.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I had heard about Travis. And then I went to Charlotte Motor Speedway and got to witness Travis Firing race a go-kart. I mean, it was just next level. I mean, the kid was so smooth. He was perfect on a racetrack. He was half a second ahead in front of everyone. Just the way that he carried himself in his seat and moved his head and looked so deep into the corner and hit his marks. I mean, he just crushed everyone. And you'll have to give me a little bit of grace. I don't know if it was that year in 99 or if it was 2000, 2001, but I was there for his first race as a senior. So he ran juniors on a Saturday and went seniors on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And so now he's racing against Jace.
Right.
His engine builder.
Right. Yeah.
And he made Jace look like a rookie.
Yeah.
And I know that sounded cocky. I don't mean it ignorant. I mean, he passed Jace and pulled away, and like everyone stopped breathing and talking. Like this was his first race as a senior. He passed the engine builder and pulled 4 go-kart links on him. And it was just like in the presence of like greatness. I mean, and that was Travis, and you get him after the race, and he was a humble kid.
He was.
I mean, there were times he would flex on you a little bit, but I mean, he was a humble kid. He always talked to you. He would always tell you what gear he's running, or what cross weight he has in the go-kart, or what tire he's on. Like he was that confident of, you could sit in it. You could sit in my go-kart if you want, and I'll sit in yours and I'm going to beat you. Like he just knew he was that good. So watching him race and compete was awesome. The Cassidy brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, they were just gangsters as well. Again, like their dad and mom and dad, like just this family that showed up.
Yeah.
And like the level of focus and intensity, and they would compete so hard on track. But then once the race was over, the music is on, they're cracking beers. They put their arm around me as well. They're another family that I think they just saw my grit of they recognized, like, I was there. I don't want to say alone, because I was there, with Randy Delp, Gene Delp's kid helping me. I was with the Sabia family, but I wasn't there with my family, and I wasn't, factory until 2001. But like the Cassidys put their arm around me and took pride in helping me move my seat and helping me with the setup. Or when I got out of the amateurs and I was, running regular seniors, helping me with tires and all of that. They took pride when I would show them, like, I found 0.8 of a second, like they felt like that was them getting a win, like seeing me being successful. So just that spirit of competition was just, again, so humbling. And now as a dad, my son is 10.5, my daughter's 9, and they're not racing by their choice. I look for that in their sports. Like when, flag football and soccer and golf, like I'm hungry for that sense of competition and community that I know any of those families, whether I was divisional racing or national racing, if I didn't have enough money to buy dinner, somebody would be buying me dinner. If we didn't have enough money, gas money to get home, someone would be loaning you $20.
Yep.
We're all now witness to the greatness of Justin Bonsignor and what he's doing.
Yeah.
So I've been reconnected with his dad.
Yeah.
And, his dad knows me from buying parts from him at WKA races. So
sure.
When he saw me 2 years ago, my opening joke was, I said, do I still owe you money? Is there still an invoice inside your cart trailer? But that was just hey, I'll see you in a month down the road in Ohio. And if you owe me money, I know you're good for it, Kelleher, with this Long Island accent.
Super
so again,
guy.
I'm rambling, but I just get excited.
But that's so cool.
I could listen to these stories all day.
Yeah.
Frank. Did you ever meet Travis's dad, Glenn?
Yeah, Glenn. Yeah, yep.
So let me preface this by saying Glenn and I are best friends. We see each other. We talk all the time. We actually take a couple trips together every year. But it was at Charlotte at a pro kart tour race, and Travis was one of the favorites. We paid decent money. It was like $3,000 to win those races. And so I didn't know Glenn very well at the time, other than he was pretty rough around the edges and a hard guy to get to know because he was kind of gruff. But I think he was really good with Travis in here's what we need to do and here's how we're these are the expectations. There was a mix-up on getting registered and qualifying, and whatever the deadline was, Travis missed it.
Okay.
So hey, you don't qualify, right? Sorry. So as it turned out, the PA wasn't working in certain areas of the paddock or whatever, but Glenn found me and he just laid into me. I can't believe this. Just for once in your life, Kugler, have a little compassion. And with that, I walked away and thought, this conversation needs to stop before I say the wrong thing. So I walked away and I said to myself, that Travis, he's a pretty good kid. So I went over to Tony Barton. You remember Tony?
Yeah.
And I said, Tony, listen, I understand what happened with Travis. It's probably our mistake for not having a good PA. Take care of him. Let's get him qualified. Make me a promise I'll never have to talk to this old man again the rest of my life. I can't stand that guy. And we laugh every time we see each other. We say, well, Cougar, did you get any compassion yet?
Yeah.
But it's things like that where as time goes on, you sit back and laugh and, like the Jace Reynolds and the Eric Garland stories. I mean, that's how it was. And I go back to no social media. It was happening, but we couldn't tell anybody.
No.
Right? It's a shame.
No, back. So, Eric, I remember I was racing a divisional race. It was 2001, a divisional race. It was either Chestertown or Sandy Hook, Maryland. And I was running Barry's equipment.
Yeah.
And, man, I grinded really hard all day on Saturday and had a respectable finish. And race was over. And I'm with the Sabia family, and we're just getting our stuff ready for the next day. And Eric Garland comes up to the pits to our area, and it's kind of like you stopped breathing. Like, am I in trouble or what's going on? And he said, hey, when you get done, come down to my pit area. I want to chat with you. And so talk to Sabia. I'm like, what do you think this is about? I'm like, I don't know. Go see what he wants to say. So I go down, I'm like, hey, man, what's up? And he's like, our driver, Michelle Pennick at the time was one of his drivers. Michelle can't race tomorrow. She's going to look at colleges. And I was like, all right. He's like, and we don't want the Rat Power guys to win tomorrow. And I was like, okay, neither do I. They're like, we want you to win. And I was like, you want me to win? They're like, yeah, we're going to give you Michelle's engine. Like we want you to put Michelle's engine on, and we want you to go out and we want you to win tomorrow. And I was like, well, I don't know if I could do this. And they're like, hey, listen, we know you're Barry's kid. All right. Like, we know you're Barry's son, essentially. And we mean no disrespect to Barry. Just, we know if you put our engine on, you're going to win. You've got the ability to do it. So I go talk to the Sabia fan, like, what do you think? And they're like, ugh, Barry's not going to like this. I'm like, I know Barry's not, like, he's going to kill me if I do this. And they're like, here's the deal. They're like, think about it this way. Don't change anything on the go-kart. Take the engine off, put the engine on, and see what happens. And then we can go back to Barry and be like, hey, we got to find some more speed out of the engine. Mm-hmm. So I'll cut to the chase. We did that. I put the engine on, set fast time, won the heat, won the feature.
Wow.
So now it's the death march back from Maryland
to Kunkletown
to go into the living room and sit down with Barry and explain what happened. And he had compassion. It was, hey, I understand. You did what you had to do. Congratulations on your first divisional win. And he just said, where do you want to go from here? And I'm like, well, we've got East Lansing, Michigan coming up, which was the second national of the year. I said, we got practice all day Thursday, all day Friday. Load me up with as many engines as you can. We'll practice. We'll throw everything at it. But I'm going to ask Eric to bring an engine. And again, we'll just do a fair test at the end of it. So he said, all right, I'll get in. At this point, Barry wants me to win. Like, Barry, and Barry's willing to sacrifice ego and his pride he was looking at me through the eyes of, you're my son.
Yeah.
I want you to go win. I want you to go get this. So call Eric in Washington, New Jersey, tell him to build an engine, bring it. So we practiced all day Thursday, all day Friday. Last practice on Friday, I put Eric's engine on. It was faster. So the next day I went out and I qualified. And here's.
Oh, wow.
How about that?
Oh, my gosh.
First time, 2001. It got a little oxidized. G-Man, East Lansing.
Yeah. Fast qualifier award.
Time. I won the heat. I won the feature. My first national win. And sorry.
It's okay.
It's okay, Frank.
That's so cool. And
it's okay.
It just,
it's okay, buddy.
It's a testament to, again, like you were saying earlier, it's such a commitment, and you just, you're so indebted, and you get, how much everyone puts in the work for you. And, that's incredible.
Sorry. So
absolutely.
Frank, don't apologize. This is the real stuff. And I will tell you, Frank, from someone who has spent so much of their life involved in karting, you don't know how good this makes me feel.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it's all about.
I'll try to get through the next part. I went in the Sabia family's pickup truck and called my dad and let him know, and he was in shock. Called Barry, and that night Eric brought the engine in a box to the hotel room, rebuilt the engine, and I went out the next day and didn't set fast time, but won the heat, won the feature.
Wow.
Went to Ohio, won both national.
Circleville or Camden?
Circleville.
Okay.
No, Camden, with the one with the big silo.
Yeah, it's Camden. Yeah.
Camden. Went to Camden, won both national events there, and went to Rockingham. And
that's the big one. That was the big one.
So set fast time.
Oh,
at the Rock.
Wow.
2001. And I finished second in both and won, wrapped up both national championships.
Who beat you at the Rock?
Osborne, kid out of Maryland, running Kevin Colburn's.
Okay. All right.
So you won
the championship that year.
I won 2 national championships that year, and I won the state of division Maryland championship that year as well. And so the emotion, you know, there's a lot there, but to kind of rewind, you know, that blue collar family garage business, my family definitely supported my racing career, but putting food on the table was most important, and the survival of the business was most important. And I was an employee, and me racing divisionals and nationals meant I wasn't going to be there for the family. So there wasn't always encouragement to go. And so at times I had to make some tough decisions and really put myself on the line.
Yeah, I could certainly see that. So what was your favorite track?
I really enjoyed Jacksonville, 103rd Street.
Long straightaway.
That long straightaway, getting through the Monza was just so fast and just so fun, and just this, you know, me growing up watching Daytona, you know, and the banking on it, that kind of felt like the closest that I would ever get to it. So that course itself was a lot of fun. You know, Michigan will always, East Lansing, you know, being my first national event winning there, definitely very special. I enjoyed all the divisional courses in Maryland, but I will say that the track where I learned kind of the most fundamentals of road course racing probably was Orville Kart Club.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to be so smooth, and it forces you to really pay attention to where you would be catching people out on the racetrack, which, you know, translates into national events of you can't hesitate when you're going to pass someone. You got to catch them at the right moment, and make the move and be clean, to where Orville, like, you're going to be on display if you just moved someone out at Orville, and you're going to be held accountable after the race by that driver and by their crew, to where it forced you to be calculated and to be smooth.
You know, a couple drivers come to mind in the Gold Cup, Travis Firing and Ryan Hunter-Reay, but they transitioned to 2-cycle. And when they did, my first thought was that's going to be a big adjustment for them, but it wasn't. They were immediately competitive and started winning. And what I learned from that is what you just said. When you race 4 cycles, if you miss a corner, if you get in and miss an apex, or you come off the track, getting off the corner, whatever you lose, it's going to take forever to get back. That momentum is critical. In a 2-cycle, it's still critical, but not nearly as much as it is in a 4-cycle. And I think it really teaches great driving skills if you race a 4-cycle first.
Yeah, Barry, he trained me the right way at Orville, to where I would, you know, I would race Friday night at Hamlin Speedway on dirt, 2 classes. Saturday, I would work in the garage. Then I would drive to Kunkletown, jump in the truck and trailer with Barry. We'd go to Snydersville. I would race 2 classes there for him. I'd go to his house. We would unload. I'd spend the night at his house. We'd wake up the next day. We'd unload all the dirt equipment. We'd load in asphalt equipment. I'd go to Orville, and I'd run stock light, stock medium, and a Briggs, and I'd run 100cc pipe. And so by the end of the weekend, I was completely trashed. But I just, you know, you see that training still exists today. For a lot of, you know, supercross and motocross, if they're in the 250, they'll train on a 450, and then they go back to 250 because everything just slows down and the bike is lighter and faster. And that's what Barry was doing with me, get out of control and get comfortable going this fast. Because then when you have to transition, sometimes run from the scale to the grid with your helmet on to jump in a 4-stroke, and then be like a surgeon and be precise with all of your marks. It just slowed it down. And then he would also put me in an offset and make me run road course racing in an offset as well, to just get that uncomfortable going right on 2 wheels in an offset go-kart, but you would pick up 0.8 of a second going left.
Yeah.
It just, you stopped looking for comfort in a go-kart of what feels good and just start driving off of a stopwatch of you're not here to feel comfortable. You're here to go fast.
Right.
And even if it rides awful, if it's crazy fast, this is now what you need to chase, what you need to find. So we would back the brakes way off, and it would just be as free as it possibly could be to find as much speed.
Yeah, like the best drivers, they're the ones that are able to be so versatile, and you're putting in a new environment, and we see that now with so many parents trying to look for, like in North Carolina, where they've got a really good club track at Eric's place, and then the kids will go run at Millbridge and run micro sprints or outlaw karts on the Wednesday night or Saturday night after, along with bouncing between different classes, because it's just, you want to keep putting yourself in uncomfortable environments and then finding a way to adapt and make it work. And as cool as all this is, I wanted to also, because you've got such a cool story as well, like Randy mentioned at the beginning of, the path that you've been with the Speedway and working your way through the motorsports industry. And I want to ask you a little bit about that and the journey that was for you over the last, bit of your life as well, and how you've gotten to where you are, because I think that's such a cool aspect for kids to hear that'll listen to this, and parents of, the opportunities that you can make for yourself by like you said, putting in showing the heart, putting in the grit and effort, and just introducing yourself to people and seeing where that goes. And to lead into that, my funny story that I'd love to tell you, I've told this, I don't remember if I've told this on some of our other podcasts in the past, but I definitely haven't said on this one yet. But my first real big break in just working in racing and in karting specifically was with play-by-play announcing. And so I was doing it just because I was bored at 13 or 14 with 12 classes and only racing one at Barnesville for fun, just for free in between the sessions when my dad and I would finish prepping the kart for the next session. That led to a Gold Cup race there in 2015. Their announcer couldn't make it. They offered it to me, and I drove down, and basically it was an hour and a half from my house in north side of Atlanta. So I think I burned up most of the $75 a day in pay and gas money. But then they called me to say, hey, that was good enough. We'll bring you to Kart Week this year. So December 2015 to start the 2016 season, they had me do the announcing for the sprint race at Kart Week. And at this time, I'm freshly 16. I don't have my own car yet. My parents, we have a 2007 Honda minivan. I'm the oldest of 5, so that had to stay home. And we had a 94 Jeep Grand Cherokee with about 200,000 miles on it. I got about halfway through the 8-hour drive to Daytona, South Georgia, and the engine lets go, fully blew. Like, I saw it heating up. I pulled over once or twice, and I'm going on my own. So my dad, he drives me all the way down, or drives all the way down in the van, picks me up, takes me all the way to the Speedway just so I can make it for this first, commentary gig that weekend, and then turns around and heads back home. And the same way you were able to hitchhike, I had a Bob Bartholomew, who was the long mainstay in karting guy, and was and still was so instrumental. And he was the first guy who let me announce at Barnesville too, gave me a lift back out of it. But that weekend was really funny for me too, because Eric Jones especially, he had known me because we had bought a kart from him when I was racing juniors at that time and just getting to go into senior. But I was very shy and very kind of in awe of him and so many people that I'd looked up to and read about and, at big races. And so I just would walk around and talk to my friends that were my age and hardly say anything to anyone. But here I am doing the play-by-play commentary for the whole weekend, made a good impression. And when I showed up to the track, Eric's brother Brandon was the one who saw me and my dad, so he thought, oh, kid and his dad here, they're going to race. And I told him, no, I'm announcing this weekend. And Brandon thought in his head, he told me this later, he's like, oh, this is going to be good. This quiet kid can't put 3 words together and walks in and is scared to say hi to us in our own tent. And then so I started announcing, and Eric goes, man, I haven't heard this new one before. Who's WK got this year? He's like, dude, it's that Xander kid that walks around and, knows our buddy Gresham Wagner, who races with Mazda MX-5 Cup and now is with Toyota in our tent. He's like, no, that kid doesn't know how to talk. What are you talking about? And he came in and he looked in the little trailer and his eyes about popped out of his head. And in a similar way with like, hey, come see me at the end of the day conversation. He's like, yeah, Xander, come over here. Oh, and then in awe again, go over, talk to him. Yeah, I need you at every Trackhouse race, and you're going to come up and drive to North Carolina for every monthly club race. And then, little did I know, 2 years later, I'd be splitting a townhouse with him and Darren Tebby, who's the GM down at AMR. And when we first went down there, so just so similar in paths. And I want to hear about how did you get involved with the Speedway? How'd the first job kind of come up? And you said end of 2003.
So yeah, it all goes back to that first race sitting at Makatech, to going to my cousin's go-kart race, to me go-kart racing, Barry Greenswig and his family making me part of their family, Eric Garland then putting his arm around me and assisting with my engine program. It was then 2001 when I was now in the fold with Eric. Eric had another driver. His name is Bill Darcy. And Bill and I became quick buddies. Bill shared with me that he worked for this Speedway company called International Speedway Corporation based in Daytona Beach, Florida. Bill knew that I was in college and studying marketing. And Bill knew beyond the shadow of a doubt I wanted to be a racer. Bill, having a few years on me, kind of had the maturity of, oh, it's probably not going to work out if you're going to race professionally per se. So what do you say we start thinking about a backup plan? And I was a little resistant, but he was, hey, International Speedway Corporation, it's owned by the France family, NASCAR sister company, the racetrack business. I can get you an interview for an internship. And I said, all right, cool. So I drove from Scranton, Pennsylvania to Daytona Beach over Easter, 2002. I interviewed for the internship and I got the internship. So I did not race Gold Cup that summer. I was here in the corporate office working with the partnership marketing team and the corporate sales team. I did not understand the business side of motorsports, but I knew business growing up in my family's garage, of being behind the counter, of working in the shop. I was going to Catholic school, so I knew how to tie a tie and put a sport coat on. And I just had that blue collar grit of, I'm going to be the first guy in the office. I'm going to be the last one to leave. I'm going to ask a million questions. And I just jumped in head first and thought, how cool is this, that I'm working in NASCAR. I'm working across the street from Daytona International Speedway. And if I can't make it as a racer, this is what I want to do. So I spent the entire summer here. I then went back to Pennsylvania. I finished my senior year of college. I stayed in touch with everyone that I had met here at ISC. I had a good impression on our chief marketing officer at the time, Paul Phipps, and he offered me a job a month before I graduated. So he actually offered me 2 jobs, one at California Speedway and one here in Daytona Beach with the corporate office. And so I said yes to the corporate job. So almost a year to the date, I graduated college on a Sunday, was in my car Tuesday, and I was a marketing coordinator on Thursday, a year to the date that I started my internship. So that was the spring of 2003. And so that pretty much ended my karting journey. Again, I took everything that I had learned in college and in my family business and just applied that to the business of NASCAR. So my first job out of college, I was an account coordinator. So what that meant, if Coca-Cola was the official beverage of 15 racetracks, they didn't have to deal with 15 people. It was me. So I was their liaison across all of these racetracks. So the fundamentals, understand their contract, understand the assets that they're supposed to get, make sure that they're getting that. That was your day job. But really the secret sauce, the magic was to show up and be accountable and to ask questions. Well, why NASCAR? Well, why ISC? Why these racetracks and not these other ones? How are you getting value out of this? How are you leveraging this at Walmart or at Publix or a grocery store? Talk to me about the drivers that you are sponsoring. How do you leverage that? I'm now learning how Fortune 500 brands, why they're saying yes to motorsports, why they're saying yes to the NFL and MLB and NHL. And I'm in a safe place to ask a lot of questions and just be a sponge, and then go back and say, well, hey, you told me that this specific market, this time of year is important to you, and you don't have a program. Well, I've got an idea for you. We could put your name on a race and you can take that to a retailer. Hey, wow, like you're listening. You're not just, showing up and delivering me my race tickets. You're trying to help me be successful. So I then went on to sales as I had good success selling some of our current partners. So the sales and marketing side was really the first 18 years of my career. As I described, International Speedway Corporation was publicly traded. NASCAR was private. There then was a merger. Right. I was part of the merger team. I'm now the Chief Revenue Officer of NASCAR. So I'm now running a team of 60 men and women across the country, representing NASCAR, the bar mark, selling NASCAR integrated media, and selling all of the assets at all of the racetracks. And it was my dream job, and having great success, having a lot of fun, as you described, Xander, living out of a suitcase and loving it. Going to races, going to major sporting events, walking into boardrooms and getting to talk about racing. And it's like, and I'm getting paid to do this. So it was a blast. And then 4 years ago, the France family asked me to get very uncomfortable and to get out of my lane of the corporate world and to be the president of Daytona International Speedway and to be the president of the Southeast region. So that's Daytona behind me, where I serve as the president. And I also oversee Talladega Superspeedway and Homestead Miami Speedway. So Brian Creighton's the president of Dega, and Guillermo Santa Cruz is the president of Homestead. They report into me, and we operate as a team. So we're sharing operational resources. We're sharing marketing resources. I'll be, very vulnerable as I've been throughout this whole interview. The racer in me at first, when I was told this is what you're going to do, was, jaw on table, like, no way, like the president of Daytona. But the ego in me was pretty scared. Was very scared at first, because this is a different job than walking into a boardroom and blue sky selling, pitching NASCAR. This is very out front, very public, very working with the community, working with the state, working with racers, being on TV. And these were things that kept me up at night that I just did not feel comfortable about doing. And so when I look back on that moment, it was really just my own vulnerability of being afraid of doing something that I had not done before. It was like going from a 4-cycle to a 2-cycle. It's a different braking. It's a different turn-in point. You're going to come out sideways and just have a choice of, I got to get comfortable being uncomfortable and figure it out, or I got to find a new job. And, quit is just not in me. And so I just kind of had to look this, down the barrel of, we're going to be flat out getting into this corner. And here I am on Fox News unveiling the new Daytona 500 logo with zero media training. Like, well, I'm just going to have to get comfortable doing it. But I guess I'll add a little bit of color there. Back to the beginning, I feel the weight of what this logo means to racers and to race fans, and I don't want to let them down. So when I talk about vulnerability and I talk of fear, like, I never in a million years imagined that I would be the president of Daytona. It still is like a pinch me moment. Like, I'm the garage kid. I'm the guy hitchhiking to national events, or I'm the guy in the boardroom talking about the sport. And now I'm in a very public role representing the sport, sitting next to Jim France and Ben Kennedy, talking about the future of NASCAR and the future of IMSA and the Rolex 24, the future of flat track racing, talking to Mark Coates and bringing USPKS because of a vision for what karting could be. So that was the fear and the anxiety of, man, I don't know if I'm ready for this, as well as the weight that comes with it. But then kind of just that Street Fighter mentality of, put the helmet on, fire the engine, like, let's let it rip, let's go for it. It's not my Speedway, right? You have to have humility in this role. I am a steward of the sport. This place was built in 1959 and has had many successful events before me, and it will after me. So it's my job to be humble, and it is my job to be a steward, and it's my job to make sure that I leave it better than I found it in every discipline, of whether that's the guest experience, whether that is the driver's experience. It took me 2 years to get comfortable with Mark Coates and USPKS, simply because I don't want to screw up WKA. Yeah. That's 50 plus years of karting, and I want to make sure that we maintain that integrity. So it took me time getting comfortable. And then when I saw USPKS rolling in and these 53-foot trailers and these kids flying in from around the country, around the world to race Daytona, it's like, all right, we're doing good here. This is not going to mess with WKA. We're going to grow the pizza bigger. We're not just going to slice the pie thinner, because that is not what I want to do with karting. I want to grow karting. I want to help elevate it to the next level. And Mark is going to help us do that here. CKNA, bringing a regional event here, that'll scratch an itch for the families that can't be here over Christmas. So it's got to be with precision of what we're doing with karting at Daytona. But that's just one of many events that we have going on here. But if you can't tell, I'm all in. I'm very passionate about karting and about racing, and making sure that Daytona maintains its prominence and its dominance for the husband and wife that are bringing their kids to the Daytona 500, to the parents that are bringing their kids to the Coke Zero Sugar 400 in August, to the Rolex 24, that we're maintaining that promise of what Daytona is.
Yeah, it's funny how you mentioned, the contrast, right, of USPKS and what now is, I think it's the brunt of what, we're able to push out more of. And I wish that there was more. And this is one of the ideas that we've had of trying to, make Back to the Roots kind of a double entendre, where it's not just history, but it's also supporting the as entry level, as grassroots level, as, family friendly as we can, from club racing to regional racing up with karting, because it is so different from your era to Randy's era to the original, where there's these so many different tiers in it all. It's cool to hear from you how much you've given thought and how much respect you have for the Speedway, but also for, hey, let's maintain this fantastic relationship Daytona's had with WK for so many years. Let's also, if we're going to look at USPKS at this high level with these factory rigs and these international kids, and without a doubt the F1 growth that has fueled more road course karting here in the States, and that type of pathway. But at the same time, bringing in CKNA's regional South division and seeing that those grassroots families that, like you said, maybe they can't go to Daytona, or to Kart Week, but they love Daytona. I mean,
yeah.
When both were announced internally in the industry, I think everyone was just so excited to get more opportunities to go to the World Center of Racing, because your view on the Speedway is shared by every race fan, it feels like, in the States, and they would love nothing more than to drive through the tunnel, and then especially to get to put a helmet on and race at Daytona. And it's refreshing to hear, because at least for me, and I'm in a lucky spot where I get to talk to guys like you, and some of the kids on my team get to do the same, and get to be really involved with Mark, with Greg Jasperson at CKNA, and with other industry people. But I'm sure a lot of families listening had no idea that there's so much respect and thought, and really, again, like deep thought about, well, I want to take, that you're putting into their shoes. It's not, oh yeah, we'll have another event and sign this contract. This will, add another weekend of, activity at the Speedway. You've put a lot into, is this the right move? And is this taking care of everybody? And is this really building the sport at all levels? That's so cool.
Xander, I need to look at it from both angles of a father, and if I'm rolling in with a pickup truck or a small trailer and I'm new to racing, and so I buy karts, I buy tires, I buy the engine, and I'm all in. And then all of a sudden, well, if you want to be fast, you need this other engine, or you need this other chassis, or this other series races their own engine and their own tire. The more difficult that we make it, the more you're going to have someone be like, this is just too much.
Yeah.
Like, I can't keep up, or I sold everything. I bought all new stuff. I showed up, but now I learned at the event that there's actually another layer and level of good equipment that I'm not going to get unless I spend another X amount of money. So we still need to maintain and protect that weekend racer and that weekly racer, that, the father and the son, the mom and the dad, or the son and daughter, that they have a shot to go out and compete at a place like the World Center of Racing. Like that is very important, as well as the other side, the polarity of it. How do we showcase the best of USPKS and WKA the weekend of the Roar, when IMSA is here testing before the Rolex 24? How do we have this invitational event that it's the 30 best kart racers from around the world coming to the World Center of Racing, and they're, call it an IROC race, if you will, that they're all on the same equipment, blah, blah, blah. And it's on TV, or it's on, there's a streaming device that, you can have someone like, hey, I want to do that. So how do we put it back into an aspirational one day want to get there, but also in the meantime, it's something that is welcoming to families.
Right, because I'm sure it's a similar parallel in conversations you probably have with Ben and the France family about, from what you guys do and how you position and look ahead with the Cup Series to the likes of all of the NASCAR roots tracks and all the short tracks around the country, of making those, people fall in love with NASCAR, with the type of short track racing or oval racing or just NASCAR racing in general, and at the same time don't feel overly intimidated to go and run sportsmen or mini stocks at their nearby NASCAR home track as well, right? It's such in a way, at least for me, it's felt like that similar parallel and a responsibility from what I've been able to build with in the couple of years we've been at it. Of this is really cool to get to show and get to have, on the road course side, more of the European factories and manufacturers putting really full efforts over here and having those big rigs here. And that's a great, sexy, good looking view and high level of the sport. At the same time, also making it known that while this might be the level that has the budget to bring more exposure because of the scope of the events, that we capitalize on that to also lift up every single club track and make those numbers healthy. I've told people before, my first, club was Barnesville. We ran clones, we ran 4-strokes, and then eventually right as the Briggs 206s really began to take fire in the early 2010s. And I think that as cool as my journey's been and whatnot, if we would have had a little healthier club turnout at the time, my dad and I would have been really happy racing club 206 racing with 20 or so people in my age group, from kids to seniors. But where I was faced with was, unfortunately, there was only 2 or 3 in that class by the time it started to wane a bit. The senior entries weren't a whole lot more, and we made the decision of, well, rather than racing 2 or 3 guys 10 to 20 times, we'd race 20 guys 2 to 3 times. But I look back and I'm so proud of what Atlanta Motorsports Parks built in Dawsonville, and they've got a really healthy club, and it was really fulfilling, and part of what sent me on this journey, helping rebuild the club down at AMR with Eric and the SSKC stuff. Because if we would have had those, you know it as well, they're just like all the names you guys were talking about at the beginning, those life lasting friendships that you make through racing. I got to see that as I traveled. And now that, living over in Texas, this has been a pretty good hotbed the last 2 decades. So I've met racing friends while I was traveling to those 2 events that have these in-town local friends. They go and hang out just like high school friends or middle school friends would, that maybe they don't race go-karts anymore, but they made that initial friendship there. And that's a big, fun part for me too, of another reason why the local level, the regional level, these more less travel based events are so key for me. Cause I know as a kid, I would have loved to have 10 racing buddies around, but I didn't really have that. They were all online, and that's where my sim racing streaming started. I met most of my national go-karting friends first doing online racing and coordinating leagues and stuff like that. That's I guess going back to it, it's cool to hear how not only, your background and your story on this is, but how important it is to you to maintain that balance, not only the long lasting relationships, but also let's make sure that we're working it at every angle and not just on one or the other, or neglecting any tier of karting, because there's a lot of differences between them, right?
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's with positive intent that other kart series emerge and things pop up. I just, opinion of one, have a viewpoint as well of, again, my cheesy analogy of looking to grow the pie, not just slice it thinner. And so how do we get it easier for a single parent to get their kid into a go-kart, or just parents to get their kids into karting, and to explain it and make it easier and show a ladder of what it could be, and that it's okay racing Friday or Saturday night at your local dirt track, right? Your local club race. And, that windshield time as a family will be some of the greatest memories that you have. And, those wins and those losses, and how you deal with mistakes that are made, and how you recover from that. Like, those, to me, were some of the greatest life lessons that I had, that came, through karting, and those experiences that, again, I want to make sure that for generations to come, that we're providing that opportunity, and, what a weight, but also an opportunity to be representing Daytona in that story.
And Frank, excuse me, but one thing I always like to ask is, and you've certainly touched on it, or danced around it a little bit and touched on it through the podcast, is when you get up in the morning and your feet hit the ground, what have you learned from karting that you carry through professionally and personally through your life?
I mean, karting as a whole, right? I don't want to burn another hour and 14 minutes, going back to just the people that I met. So I think I could, talk more about Barry and Eric and Tony, and just, all of those. I mean, there are so many lessons that I was learning. Xander's probably too young to remember the Karate Kid, but they definitely Miyagi'd me, right? Wax on, wax off. I didn't know they were teaching me until, years down the road. And the same with my dad and my uncles in the garage business. But, when I think of karting, there's no shortcuts on the stopwatch. I mean, there is just accountability, and you are accountable to looking ahead and looking into the corner, but also being present where you are, and, being in that flow state of believing in yourself and trusting, and immediately you got to forgive and adjust, and that you got to roll out and then look into the next bit of where you're at and give it 110% of what you have at that moment, and hold yourself accountable. And when the race is over and you're looking at your finish, or you're looking at the stopwatch, it's no one's fault, right? There's no one to I mean, granted, if the engine blew up, or if some, clown put you in the fence, but I mean, outside, like, you've got to hold yourself accountable. And even then, at that point, you can't blame someone else for wrecking. Like, you shouldn't have been back there. You should have qualified up front. So just that accountability. My least favorite saying in life is good enough. I mean, I just cannot accept that or deal with that. And remember that there was something I did working in the family garage business, and my uncle took me out front, and he firmly had me by the neck, and, it said Kelleher Tire. And he said, if you mistreat someone in this community, they're going to go around town and say, Kelleher, don't work with Kelleher. They're, I got a bad story about them. You got to hold yourself accountable. And I think that bleeds into, if it can't just be good enough, you've got to, it could be used, it could be wore out, but you got to make it shine. You got to make it stand. So whatever the circumstance is, translate that to when it rains during, a big NASCAR race across the street. Like, we can't just get emotional. Like, okay, people are still here. It's still sold out. We've got to entertain. We've got to deliver. So, you just got to hold yourself accountable and give it 110%.
The last one I have for you is talking about the windshield time with families, right? Is there a favorite memory, or the first one that comes to mind, of all the travel stories that you've had, going to a race, coming from one? I know I have a couple. One little thing from our club track even was going through Atlanta. Traffic was terrible, but we would always hit the Dairy Queen down the street from my parents' house at the end of a club race, and my dad and I would go get blizzards. And I still to this day think of that when I see a Dairy Queen down the road. So, but any travel story? I'm
just gonna free fall and just give you a bunch of funny ones that make me smile, that come to my mind. You mentioned Dairy Queen. I'll mention Bob's Big Boy. Ate at a lot of Bob's Big Boys with the Sabia family heading west. There was one year at Charlotte Motor Speedway, I raced a Race of Champions race in a 3-hour race, and I thought I was going to be a tough guy and drive home to Pennsylvania after the race. I think I made it 10 minutes up the road, and I said, Barry, you got to drive. I definitely wore out some Blink-182 CDs. Just being a superstitious racer, you want to listen to the same things. Just, pulling over on the side of the highway, running out of gas. Yeah, just that was half the fun, half the adventure.
Right.
My diet was trash back then, Mountain Dew and Doritos, but just a ton of fun.
Oh, this has been great, Frank. Thank you so much again for the time.
Thank you, Frank. It means a lot to me. Thanks.
No, hey, I'm again grateful that you thought of me for the opportunity. Definitely emotional. It's fun emotion, right? Because like I said, it's still got to pinch myself to where I'm at, and I mean, like, if I didn't go kart racing, I wouldn't be the president of Daytona. It's as simple as that. If I didn't have a family into racing and an uncle and a cousin with a go-kart they didn't sell, and Barry put his arm around me, and Eric, with the engine, introducing the Bill, open up the door for an internship. I wouldn't be here today. And I still feel like every day I got to show up and I got to earn it. And, Randy, it's because of men like you behind the scenes that were selflessly, you didn't know what you were creating, but you were creating a beautiful community of families to create these memories and these opportunities. And you don't get the thanks and the love and the appreciation that you and all the corner workers and the French fryer workers and people selling concessions, and Xander, you jumping in to do the PA. It is a community. It is a family to this day, June 19th, 2025, that it was back in the 70s of you and Barry, banging wheels, running McCullough's or whatever it was. We're handed the torch, and we got to keep running and know who we're handing it off to. So Xander, in a weird way, the universe, us putting us together, you got a friend with me. If there's ever anything I can do for you, don't hesitate to call, text, reach out. And you've got my commitment to support you and today's karting community in any way that I can. And it'll be on you to carry it forward down the road as well.
Yeah, well, you guys have set a pretty high bar, especially Randy over here.
Yeah, and I would tell you, Frank, not only am I proud of you, but the karting community is proud of you. You did good.
Thank you. I got a lot left in the tank, so I feel like I'm just getting rolling.
And you get more in your tank than I've got in mine, but it's not empty.
That's right. I know. Well, great to see you. I hope to see you both in Daytona soon. And thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you, Frank.